Everything we have, we owe to you. We truly appreciate and be content with everything you give us. And we truly understand that every blessing that we have in our lives comes from you. Lord, we thank you so much for everything you do for us. We thank you so much for your love, for your mercy, for your grace. Lord, just be with us as we go through this service. Open our hearts to the spoken word, what we hear tonight. And Lord, just help us to truly understand and truly think about you. Lord, we just thank you so much for everything you do. And we just ask your help, Lord, ask your guidance, and Lord, just to help you, ask you to help their health is not what they want it to be. Lord, just reach out to those folks and touch them as only you can as a great physician. Lord, we just ask you to do their military overseas and ask you to bring them home safe when the time comes. Lord, we also just ask your forgiveness for all of our sins and shortcomings and help us each and every day to live a life that we will please in you. Take your guidance and try to live a life that we know you would want us to live. The Lord, spirit us now to go through the remainder of the service. In His name we pray. Amen. If you'd like to go ahead and mark the invitation song, the invitation song will be number 766. Again, the invitation song will be number 766. The song before the lesson this evening will be number 595. Again, song before the lesson number 595. Stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross. Lift up his royal banner, it must not suffer loss. From victory unto victory, his army shall be lead. Till every foe is vanquished and Christ is born indeed. Stand up for Jesus, the trumpet call brave. Forth to the mighty conflict, in this his glorious day. Yea, loud in thou servant against unnumbered foes. Slay courage, rise with danger, and strength to strength
shall be. With the King of glory shall reign eternally. Well, tonight what we're going to do is we're going to look at 2 Kings. Now, being a preacher pretty much my entire adult life, I probably look at things a little bit different. I'm not saying better, but it's great, a little bit different than maybe you do. Because you pick up your Bible, you read it, you're enjoying it, you're studying it. But when a preacher picks up the Bible, what he's trying to do is find a lesson. Because you're always getting a lesson. Even when you're on vacation, you think about getting a lesson. And so you approach the scripture probably not in as healthy ways as what you want. When I first started preaching, I'm sure some people saw that I needed help, and I realized I needed help, so I bought some books on preaching outlines, and I'm certainly grateful for them, and they were very, very helpful when somebody started out. It gave me a kind of a general idea of how you go about preaching, but they never did work through a book. And so you buy a sermon outline book, and they're going to have one chapter, one story out of maybe 2 Kings. In 2 Kings 5, the heaping of Naaman, that's always a favorite sermon. It's one of the easiest texts in the world to preach. And we'll probably close out with that. But anyway, you don't get the big picture. You get stories and you yank them out of their context, and so you miss the big picture. And that's one of the things I've been striving to do in teaching, on Sunday night, on going through a book. Is I'm trying to give people a big picture. I don't have a study guide, and maybe if you would like when I put one together, because I go through a lot of things actually. But if you kind of get the big picture of 2 Kings, you're going to have a greater understanding of a whole lot of the Old Testament prophets. And to me, that's exciting. I know I told you this. I went to undergraduate school, 4 years at Bible college. The only thing you major in was Bible. And I didn't take a single class of the Old Testament. And I remember talking to a preacher friend of mine just a few years older than me, and I was asking him, do you know anything about the Old Testament? And his attitude was, well, I don't worry about the Old Testament. That's just history. It's got nothing to do with us. Well, I've learned a lot better since then. And there are messages in the Old Testament for us, and it is beneficial for us to understand the big picture, because God is at work in every phase of history. That's one thing that makes it worthwhile. So we look at 2 Kings, and what you've got, and I draw a little map, and it's a beautiful little map, but I do it more for me than I do you, I guess. But you got this little country of Israel. And it's split, and now you got two countries. Of course, you know this. The capital of Judah is Jerusalem. The capital of Israel starts out being Tirzah, and then it ends up being Samaria, and that's kind of where it is. Okay, down here you have the lineage of David. Not always good lineage, but you've got a king that is a descendant of David. Up here you've got 4 different dynasties, maybe 5, if you count the guys reign just for a little while. But you've got political turmoil. This is a richer area. It's the farmland. Down here, I don't know how in the world anybody lives down there, to be perfectly honest. Up here you got the city of Galilee, you got some fertile fields, still rocky land, not as fertile as it is here, but it's still way more so than Judah. So they're going to end up being a wealthier kingdom, but we're still talking about a tiny little country. Now, you've got in the beginning of 2 Kings, and the end of 1 Kings, and then the 2 Kings, you've got Elijah and Elisha, 2 great prophets. As far as we know, they wrote a book. They are preaching, and they are preaching mostly to Israel, the northern kingdom. Now, they have some things to say to the southern kingdom, but mostly they're traveling around, and no matter how many miracles is worked through them, they're not able to turn the people of Israel back to God, which is a very tragic thing. It shows you to depths that they have fallen to in Israel. And so you start this going back and forth after you get past Elisha, down where you're talking about Judah, where you're talking about Israel. And that's confusing and hard to follow. I don't know of anybody that's ever said, I don't have a problem with that. Because you are bouncing back and forth, and we don't always get everything that we need, or don't understand everything that we want to in this going back and forth. And then there's another problem, I'm sure you're aware of this, that there are kings' names who are spelled different. In fact, there's one instance, I think it's in chapter 12, where the king's name is spelled different in the space of 2 verses or 3 verses, maybe. And that's a little bit confusing, and then you've got kings. If I were to say King Uzziah, you know a little bit about him. If I were to call him Azai, who's that? It's the same guy. They just use different names, and that's confusing. But it's not altogether, it's something that still goes on today. Because whenever you have a pope, anybody know the current pope's name? I don't even remember his paper name. But it's a pretty common name. But when you become pope, you take on a new name. Where did they get that from? They got that from the way royalty does. When you become king, you have your name, you have the throne name. And so that's one reason you run into some different spellings. And that does make it very, very difficult to follow along. But anyway, of course the temple is down here. And this is a strange thing. Every time they get it fixed up, somebody comes in and takes everything out of it. I mean, they just can't get it all back in place before somebody marches up there and they take everything, they rob the temple, or the king says, wait, don't burn the town down, we give you all this treasure. And they go out there and they loot it out of the temple. So that's going on with them. Because after all, Judah is a tiny little country. Anybody got any idea how big Judah is? I always like to compare it to something that I know a little bit about, so I can make some connection. This country, this plays into appreciating God's care for us. Judah is the size of Rhode Island during this time. Now, Rhode Island is about the size of 2 large counties in South Dakota. So we're talking about a little bitty, tiny place. Now that's going to come into play in your appreciation of God's care for the people who live in that area as we go through this. Now Wednesday night, Barry filled in for me, and y'all studied Jonah. Well, old Jonah goes up here to Nineveh, it's way up in here, and speaks to those people, and they all repent. Wonderful results, terrible problem. Okay, but time has passed, and the Assyrians are growing in power. Israel is a rotten group of people. I mean, there's maybe some good people there, but they just keep getting worse and worse and worse as time goes on. And so God is now going to use Assyria. He spared them when Jonah preached to them and they repented. But now these people are becoming more wicked all the time. Their leaders become power hungry. They start taking over everything around them. And you've got prophets that start saying to Israel, you better straighten up, or God is going to bring the Assyrians down on you. Now, that ought to make them shake in their boots and repent like the people of Nineveh did when Jonah went up there and preached to them. Because these are some, I better write this up here so you already know it, but Assyria, not Syria, Assyria. Syria is right in here, okay? Assyria is this powerful nation. They're building this empire. They're swelling. They're spreading they're defeating all the people around them. And God is telling these people, you need to straighten up or I'm going to bring the Syrians down. Now this is the connection. This is what's going on in 2 Kings chapter 15, 16, and 17. And I think it's in chapter 15, you've got a king down here and make sure I'm right on this, Jimmy, Ahaz, down in Judah. Now what is going on is Israel has decided that they're going to take on Assyria. And they form an alliance with Egypt, which is on down here. And they try to talk the king of Judah into going into rebellion against them. Now there's a prophet that goes to this king of Judah and says, don't you get attached to these people. God's going to take care of you. The king doesn't listen. Instead, what he does is he marches up here to Syria, goes up to Damascus when Tiglath-Pileser, the king of the Assyrians, has marched down to that point and says, look, I'm on your side. Don't like what's that. Now that's exactly what Isaiah told him not to do. But he goes up there and makes an alliance with Assyria. And then while he's there, I guess he's impressed with the power of the Assyrian gods. Because when he goes back, he says, hey, I want you to make me a statue of a god just like they have in Assyria, and we're going to worship him. So he takes this garbage back down here to Judah. Okay, so Isaiah is prophesying about Israel. He's talking to Judah. But I want you to see this. This is in leading up to 721 BC. Folks, I can tell you, if you get about 4 dates in the Old Testament, I don't know about y'all, but when I was in school, one of the things that I hated the most was remembering dates. I hated it. But there's really just 4. And if you get those 4, you can go back and you can hang every prophet on those dates, which will give you a better understanding when you read them. Now, leading up to 721 BC, you've got Isaiah the prophet. Anybody else, you know anybody else is speaking during this time? I know you do. You've got Hosea. If I say Hosea. Hosea. What does Hosea do? You remember this story? Because Israel is right. They're worshiping idols. They're still going through the motion, by the way, of worshiping God. They're practicing syncretism. They're worshiping God, and they would tell you we believe in the God of Israel, but they're worshiping him and everything else too. Now, Hosea, God says to him, I want you to go marry a prostitute. Now, this is a priest. Go marry a prostitute, take her home, love her, she's your wife. That would have shocked everybody around. And then she starts having kids, and I know you know this, but his 3rd child is named like mine. That hurts me to my core to think about it. I feel sorry for the child being named that. I really feel sorry for the child. But the hurt that was there. I mean, he's already embarrassed himself by going out and marrying a prostitute. But now he's married a prostitute that's not faithful to him. I know of an individual. My oldest son, one of his best friends in high school. Married girl, she already had 1 child. They end up having 4 children while they're married. And he does, I don't know what prompted this, he does the DNA test. And 2 of those children were not his. Now, he'd been raising them and loved them thinking they were his. I can't imagine the pain that young man has felt. The humiliation as well, the betrayal. And God says to Hosea, love this woman. He does love her. She's unfaithful. She ends up leaving him. And God says, go buy her back. She's sold herself into prostitution again. You got to buy her out of debt, bring her back home, and love her again. And he's saying, that's what I'm going to do to Israel. Because Israel has been unfaithful to me. They're going into captivity. And even though they did what they deserved, I'm going to restore them. I'm going to love them again. Okay, that's how Hosea plays with this. Another prophet during this time is the prophet Amos. Now, Amos is attacking a different problem in Israel, this kingdom here. His main thing is attacking the abuse of the rich people of the poor. Now, there's more to it than that, but that's the gist of what he's going to say. And I don't know whether you remember this, but Amos is from way down here. And he goes up there and he preaches to all these rich people and says you're foreclosing on people so you can buy you a pair of silver slippers. You don't need the silver slippers, but you don't care anything about the poor people. Now he also says, here you are, you're going to the they may already develop synagogue, that's up for debate, but they're not going to the temple. Remember the king, the first king of Israel, this divided king, sets up the golden calf here and here, they're worshiping that, they're worshiping other gods, but there's still some of them going through some semblance of worship of Jehovah God. But they're sitting there. Remember this is South Harbor. They're sitting there and they're thinking, when will this get over so I can make some more money? You don't think church people have ever had that problem, do you? Everybody got so busy that they never have time for church stuff, they always think about how to make more money. Well, at least they're still sitting in the assembly thinking about it, but they're sitting there and they're thinking, okay, what can I do? I can go out here and I can buy, wheat that's been spoiled, and I can take it and mark it up and sell it to the poor. They're sitting there thinking that stuff, and Amos the prophet is sitting with God to go up there and just blast, do they repent? It's really a sad thing. Now, Micah is also going to preach during this time, and if you sit down and you read Micah, and you sit down and you say, well, I'm going to read Amos next, you're going to see they say much of the same thing, it's just Micah doesn't say as much, because you got 66 chapters in Isaiah, that's correct. You got a lot of preaching. Micah is a condensed version, but it's still saying the same thing. Micah is going to be preaching to Israel and Judah, probably more to Judah. So, okay, keep this in mind. This is a big, important date. If you get this date, 7/21, connect to 2 Kings 17, all of a sudden you're going to understand why God is angry. And that gives you an indication of what the prophets are saying. It helps you have an understanding of what they're saying, because you know what is motivating the sermon. Right? I mean, that helps you a little bit. It actually will help you a whole lot. Now, we got a series growing in power. God is about to use them to come down on Israel. Israel just keeps going down. And so 721 BC, I don't know why I erased it. 721 BC, Assyria comes down, wipes this group out as a nation, and deports them. Takes some back up here, up into here. And they always were Israelites, Jewish people. Whenever there was a siege or some kind of war, a lot of them would take off down to Egypt. No doubt some of them stayed in Judah. So you've got these Jewish people that are now scattered throughout the Assyrian Empire. And just let that sink in, because we're not just looking at 721 BC, we're looking on down to the time of Christ. And you find that there are more Jews living outside of Israel than there are in Israel. It starts here. Because those people, even though they're allowed at one point to come back, the majority of them stay with God. In fact, one of the greatest centers of Jewish scholarship was in Baghdad, Iraq. Up until fairly recent times, when the Muslims really lost their minds and began attacking and driving everybody out from over there, they didn't agree. For centuries and centuries, the best scholarship of Israel or the Jewish people was in Baghdad, and there was a pretty good group of them in Egypt. There were times where they were not welcome in Egypt, but for a long time there was a large Jewish population. How did Jews get everywhere? What's that going to set us up for? It's going to set us up for, you've got people that are awaiting the Messiah living all over that part of the world. And so when the missionaries leave out to the church, they go to visit and always look for the first place for the synagogue. When they first get there, because they can go in and they can say to the Jewish people, who by the way have been living there 500 or 600 years, that to take something that happens in history and use it for the spread of the gospel later on. But what happens is that you now have this vacant country, but you don't leave it vacant, right? You bring in people that you beat up before or beat up from other areas. And the thing is if you split up conquered people, they can't get together and fight you. So it's cruel, but it's pretty smart when you look at it from a military point of view. So they bring in people that are not Jewish to this area. Everybody here has heard Samaritans referred to as half-breeds. They're not half-breeds. They didn't have that much Jewish blood in them at all. Most of them would have been deported from other areas of the world. Now, when they get here, this is all in 1717. I realize I've gone over some of this with you, but I don't, not everybody's heard it. So you bring these people in, and they start having people kill the lions, and their thinking is gods are territorial. And they're like, we're not from here. The God of this land is angry with us. Bring somebody in here, teach him about the God of this land, and we'll serve him, and that way we'll stop getting killed. So they bring in a Jewish priest who teaches them about God. Now they're going to worship the God of Israel and still these other gods. So they're not fully converted, at least not during this time. They seem to be during the time of Jesus, fully converted to just worship the God of Israel. But when we refer to the Samaritans as half-breed, that's not what they are. There's probably some intermarried, but mostly they were from that region anyway, or this country anyway. So you end up with this group of Samaritan people. That's where the animosity began. The Jews didn't recognize his fellow Israelites because of blood lineage, because they just didn't. And there's a lot of hostility that develops over the centuries. All right, so now, that's what we've got going on. Anybody? I won't ask again. It's not fair. I know where I'm going, you know. The next prophet that comes along is Nahum. And what does he do? He preaches about the destruction of Assyria. Now, God has used Assyria. But Assyria has become very, very cruel. They really got into this killing. They really got into dominating people. They love conquering other people. They love plundering and pillaging. They became a very cruel nation, and so God starts to speak about their downfall. Okay, we've got this little bitty country of Judah now, the size of Rhode Island. I mean, to give you an idea how little Rhode Island is, how many people have you ever met in Rhode Island? I saw one car one time. I was so excited. You know how you drive down the road with your kids and you count for different license plates? I just seen one car roll out. I mean, it was a real. I mean, it wasn't really from there. I mean, I know it's a state. It's on the map. Never have seen anything really make me no 100% it's there. Tiny little place. Actually, no Lynn and Amy have been there. But anyway, they were in Connecticut, went to Rhode Island, because Rhode Island has better beaches. But both of them outside in the county. But anyway, Assyria, did they affect Judah during this time? They beat up everybody around. Now you don't get this. This is to me is a powerful thing. They attacked Judah. And it gets down to there's one city left. Now, I'm not going into all of this, okay? There's so much here. It's Jerusalem. And Jerusalem, all by itself, King Hezekiah is king. God keeps telling Hezekiah through Isaiah, it's going to be all right. When everything around you is wiped out, and you're the last town standing, can you understand why it would be difficult to believe that? Yeah. In fact, there's a famous piece of pottery or something that is written on that says we can no longer see the signal fires from lakes. So it's that time period, and somebody wrote down, and that's to me is intriguing. It wasn't just the Native Americans that set up smoke signals. They used smoke signals back then, and the people of Jerusalem said, uh-oh, there's not smoke signals coming up there in Lake, which is a pretty good sized town. They realized we're surrounded by this massive army. We're the only thing left, and God saves us. And you can read this book to find out how he did that. But this little bitty country, and look at it on the map, down here, the Syrians going to conquer Egypt, Ethiopia, all up here to what is Iran and Iraq, what is Turkey, even going on up here to modern day Ukraine. They got all of that in one little tiny country that's still standing. It only happens when God's on your side. And this guy's king, you know a little bit about him, and I know a lot about him. He ends up having a son by the name of Manasseh. This is one of those things where you go off on a different study. And now Manasseh is going to reign for 55 years in this little country. He's terrible. He's terrible. I don't know how you do stuff like this. He ends up getting involved in a worship system where you offer up children as burnt sacrifice. Now, when I say that, you understand you don't kill the child and then burn. You sear the child to death. This is in Judah. This is where the temple is. This is where God's presence dwells in the temple. This is where David lived, man after God's own heart. 55 years of this garbage. And the leadership is the country's direction determined by a leader, or do the leaders just represent the direction of the country that's taken? You know, we all fuss about the presidents that we have, one or the other. Somebody's gonna fuss, right? And nobody wants to hear this, but generally we get what we deserve. Because, anyway, Manasseh is going to die, his son is going to reign 2 years. Now, there's more to the story, too. I'm not covering the details. Because, once again, if you get so caught up in details, you forget what the big story is about. And a lot of the details that we bring up aren't worth even bringing up anymore. Because there's conjecture, guessing. Okay, Amnon is going to reign 2 years, and he dies, and there's this guy by the name of Josiah. And this is a tragic story, as far as I'm concerned. Josiah is a great king. 8 years old when he becomes king. Now listen, somebody was advising him the right way, and I think he had godly advice. You don't turn an 8-year-old loose as king, right? You just don't do it. That's not a wise move. You've got advisors. So somebody's got it. Now, they decided, hey, it took 55 years of Manasseh, then 2 years of his son. And so the temple was in bad shape, and so they go there and they start cleaning it up, fixing it up a little bit. Remember what they find? The law. That's how bad this country got. They're like, what's this strange book? When you take it back to Josiah and read it, and he's like, oh boy, are we in trouble? Because God says don't worship anybody else. Look what my dad, my granddad, look what people have been doing, you know. They've been worshiping all these other gods, we're in trouble. Now, if you want to see what this is, and learn to tie in these books, Jeremiah starts preaching while Josiah is king. Josiah ends up dying, king. Egypt, I think it's Egypt here, I forget some of this stuff. Takes him out of power, puts up King Daylight. But in this whole time period, Assyria has been declining, and Babylon has now become, it's in very close to the same area. I mean, it's the same territory, and the two cities, Assyria and Babylon, aren't that terribly far apart. But now you've got a new world power going on. And so God's going to use them. This little tiny nation that He's kept going as a nation has departed from it. The side tries to turn people back. Jeremiah comes in and starts preaching while he's king. You've got some other people that are addressing this situation. Anybody know who they are? Zephaniah. Come back a little bit later on. Well, that's a little bit later, but you're right. Okay. After Josiah dies, they just down. And God sends these prophets, and they're preaching, and there's false prophets running around saying, Jeremiah's a liar, he's just too negative, God's going to punish us a little bit, not going to punish us very long, he doesn't know what he's talking about, you got all that going on. You've got these prophets addressing the situation, so finally, God says, this is it. And so you're going to have 3 invasions before Judah actually falls as a nation. And the first one, they go in and they take some of the best and brightest young people. And that's the Judah's referred to. You got Daniel and his friends with 3 really cool Babylonian names. It's not the Jewish names, it's the Babylonian names. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I mean, that's just, I don't know why we don't name the kids that. Alright? You would think you'd have some good sense about you if this really powerful nation came in, took what they wanted, and went back, that you would kind of cooperate with them, say, okay, they're in charge, we're not going to get in this trouble again. But they don't, and so there's a second invasion, and then there's a third invasion, and 586, I didn't mention this, Daniel, Ezekiel. Ezekiel's in captivity, and Ezekiel, and we'll look at these in more detail, but Ezekiel is up in captivity, and God has him send a message down to Judah. Yeah, he's not done punishing you yet. And I don't think Ezekiel wants to believe they're as bad as they are, so God takes him in some visions down there, and he sees how bad they are. But anyway, that's Ezekiel, Daniel, Jeremiah, Zephaniah, Habakkuk. There's one other, and it's leaving my brain, and I'll have to remember next time. So at 586, and you always put /7 because it's a difference of a couple of months there. You have Jerusalem destroyed. You have Judah as a nation destroyed. And they're conquered people, and they're scattered everywhere. And to be perfectly honest, it was the best thing that ever happened to them. Why? Because as far as we know, they don't worship idols anymore. And you just don't read about Jewish people from this point on being involved in idol worship. You read about them being lethargic in their worship, lax in their duty to worship God, robbing God, but you don't read about worshiping idols. Now, one more thing, and I'll quit. Because I want you to see this. The big picture, 2 Kings. Elijah, the destruction of Israel, the destruction of Judah, all these bunch of stories in between, but that's the big picture. That gives you a picture of God working through history. But all of a sudden the temple's gone. How do you worship God? How do you keep your faith? place in the Bible that authorizes synagogues. Does anybody say that synagogues were a bad thing? Probably, there's little evidence that there's some evidence. That's 586, the temple was destroyed, you know. So is synagogue exactly like the temple? No, you don't have to have Leviticus priest. You're not offering up animal sacrifices. So what do? You're doing what the churches do. Churches look like synagogues. Fellowship, prayers, it's reading the word, it's explaining the word, applying the word. It looks like church. And they sing. They're singing. And so you have this model that churches are based upon. All that from this time period. Now I said it's going to close with 2 Kings 5. I'm not going to close that because I don't want to do an injustice. God is at work throughout history. God is bigger than any moment. He's in every moment. And God can maintain. If God wants something to stand, it will stand, and hell cannot knock it down. And God, you see, established the church, and Jesus says the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. We want to be a part of the church. We want to be a part of the kingdom. That when everything is shaken up and everything falls apart, one thing stands, and that's the church. And God had it in His mind before the world ever began, and He wants you to be in. Everybody needs to respond. Please do for us, stand.
Lord Jesus, I long to be perfectly whole. I want Thee forever to live in my soul. Break down every idol, cast down every foe. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Whiter than snow, yes, whiter than snow. Now wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Lord Jesus, Thou seest Thy patiently wait. Come now and within me a new heart create. To those who have sought Thee, Thou never saidst no. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Whiter than snow, yes, whiter than snow. Now wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow.
Does anyone here tonight need to partake of the Lord's Supper? Does everyone have their cup? Please God. We God, thank you for this wonderful day you gave us today. Thank you for everything you do. Please be those who are about to partake the body of your Son. Please let them remember your ultimate sacrifice and die on the cross for the sins. Thank you for everything you do. We pray. Please God. God, thank you for everything you do. Please be those who are about to partake the fruit of the vine. Remember your Son shed his blood on the cross for the remission of our sins. Thank you for letting us come here tonight to worship your name. So we pray.
I'm about to run it down. We're going to be a meeting tonight about sound system, the camera part of it, and everything. But since Sean is not involved in from the start. We'll postpone it till, I think, next week. Anyway, of course, Sean and Susan have a grandchild, and that's one. Keep, my almost son-in-law, who was supposed to be my son-in-law next Saturday, keep him and Amy in prayers. He's having to have surgery. He fell while trying to move, broke his ankle, his foot all in pieces, shattered the heel. So it's going to be a long process for him. You saw him, he's about this tall, so that adds to the complication on him healing. So, waiting to be determined, and, I don't want to bore you with all the details, but this has really been a trying time for both of them. James's parents were up visiting, actually looking, they're from Jacksonville, Florida, actually looking for a place to buy in Florida, Alabama, move up to be near the grandkids. And, she fell and broke her hip in his apartment. And so he was trying to move his stuff from his upstairs apartment to a new apartment when he broke his foot off the pieces. So Amy has been taking care of him and his mom. Sharing the same bed, neither one of us can get up. So it's been a tough couple of weeks for him. And got a tough ways to go. But others need to be mentioned.
We got a note yesterday that said Kim Strickland is very, somebody correct, probably the oldest Arthur Floyd grandchild. Rita. And he was had a heart attack and had to have surgery and was pretty sick, but now he's gone home. And he's recuperating there.
Now, Tim Strickland.
Kim Strickland.
And my Amy actually mentioned this as well. She has a friend that she works with at St. Jude's that's fairly young lady, with 2 kids. She has cancer that's all the way around her heart and lungs, and wrapped around some organs. So, now, Miss Wanda Johnson was in the hospital. She's home and recuperating. So keep her health in prayer. Anybody else? Well, let's have a close.
Randy, we haven't mentioned it, I haven't heard all that, it's that the Pearsons are grandparents.
Yeah, they got a grandson, right? Now, he told me to wait this morning, that was this morning. Wyatt Doug. Sounds like a cowboy. Yeah, they're all good with it. All right, nothing else is out of close prayer to be dismissed.
Oh, our gracious Heavenly Father, hallowed be your name. Father, we come to you this time thanking you so very much for your love. Thank you for your mercy, for your grace, Father. We thank you for allowing us to gather together here this evening to hear more from your word. Father, there's so much history, so much information and good things for us to know and glean from your word. Even though many times we may focus on the Old Testament, that Old Testament is there for us to learn from. And we know there are many things that we apply to our lives to help us be better Christians. But we pray that we'll take those things with us. And that when we're at home this week, we'll go back and we'll look, we'll study deeper into those stories. Father, we pray that you bless those who were mentioned, those who are injured and sick. Please help them to regain their health, Father, and do your will. Father, we pray that your will be done in all things. We thank you so much, Father, for your Son who gave his life, paid the death that we all owe.